Welcome back, everybody, to the Revolving Ghost YouTube channel, and Charlie here, and CC on the wheel. This is my attorney here, and I do whatever he advises me to do, ladies and gentlemen. We are on our way to Las Vegas right now. We are currently in Rhode Island, CC, is that right? So, gonna be a little bit of ways to go, but we're gonna do some gambling, and we expect to win big. But first, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to be doing some more Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas, but we're actually going to be reading the explanation for how this wonderful saga was written, this search for the American dream. So this is known as Strange Rumblings in Aztlan. The murder and resurrection of Ruben Salazar by the Los Angeles County Sheriff's Department. Savage polarization and the making of a martyr. Bad news for the Mexican American. Worse news for the pig. And now, the Chicano, riding a grim new wave. The rise of the Batos Locos. Brown power and a fistful of reds. Rude politics in the barrio. Which side are you on, brother? There is no more middle ground. No place to hide on Whittier Boulevard. No refuge from the helicopters. No hope in the courts. No peace with the man. No leverage anywhere. And no light at the end of this tunnel. Nada. Morning comes hard to the Hotel Ashmun. This is not a place where the guests spring eagerly out of bed to greet the fresh new day. But on this particular morning, everybody in the place is awake at the crack of dawn. There's a terrible pounding and shrieking in the hallway near room number 267. Some junkie has ripped the doorknob off the communal bathroom, and now the others can't get in, so they are trying to kick the door down. The voice of the manager wavers hysterically above the din. Come on now, fellas, do I have to call the sheriff? The reply comes hard and fast. You filthy gabacho pig! You call the fucking sheriff, and I'll cut your fucking throat! Now, the sound of wood cracking, more screaming, the sound of running feet outside my door, number 267. The door is locked, thank Christ, but how can you say for sure in a place like the Hotel Ashman? Especially on a morning like this with a mob of wild junkies locked out of the hall bathroom, and maybe knowing that number 267 is the only room within lunging distance that has a private bath. It is the best in the house at $5.80 a night, and the lock on the door is brand new. The old one was ripped out about 12 hours earlier, just before I checked in. The desk clerk had gone to a lot of trouble to get me into this room. His key wouldn't fit the new lock. Jesus Christ, he kept muttering. This key has to fit. This is a brand new Yale lock. He stared balefully at the bright new key in his hand. Yeah, I said, but that key is for a Webster lock. By God, you're right, he exclaimed, and he rushed off, leaving us standing there in the hallway with big chunks of ice in our hands. What's wrong with that guy, I asked. He seems out of control. All this sweating and grappling and jabbering. Benny Luna laughed. Man, he's nervous. You think it's normal for him to be letting four nasty-looking Chicanos into his best room at 3 in the morning? With all of us carrying chunks of ice and funny-looking leather bags? He was staggering around the hall, convulsed with laughter. Man, this guy is freaked. He doesn't know what's going on. 3 Chicanos, said Oscar, and 1 hillbilly. You didn't tell him I was a writer, did you? I asked. I'd noticed Oscar talking to the man, a tall, sort of defeated-looking Germanic type, but I hadn't paid much attention. No, but he recognized me, Oscar replied. Look at this road we're going down here, folks. So I'd assume that Oscar is Oscar Zeta Acosta, who the attorney was based on in the Fear and Loathing story. He said, you're the lawyer, aren't you? So I said, that's right, and I want your best room for this gabacho friend of mine. He grinned. Yeah, he knows something's wrong with this scene, but he doesn't know what. These guys are scared of everything now. Every merchant on Whittier Boulevard is sure he's living on borrowed time. So they go all to pieces at the first sign of anything strange going on. It's been this way ever since Salazar. The room clerk, manager, keeper, etc. suddenly rounded the hallway corner with the right key and led us into the room. It was a winner, a rundown echo of a place I stayed in a few years ago in the slums of Lima, Peru. I can't recall the name of that place, but I remember that all the room keys were attached to big wooden knobs about the size of grapefruits, too big to fit in a pocket. I thought about suggesting this to our man in the Hotel Ashman, but he didn't wait around for tips or small talk. He was gone in a flash, leaving us alone to deal with a quart of rum and God only knows what else. We put the ice in a basin next to the bed and chopped it up with a huge rigging knife. The only music was a tape cassette of Let It Bleed. What better music for a hot night on Whittier Boulevard in 1971? This was not... Excuse me, ladies and gentlemen, I've got a little bit of a condition. I have to clear my throat constantly. Okay, where was I? This has not been a peaceful street of late, and in truth, it was never peaceful. Whittier is to the vast Chicano barrio in East Los Angeles what the Sunset Strip is to Hollywood. This is where the street action lives. The bars, the hustlers, the drug market, the horrors, and also the riots. The trashings, killings, gassings, the sporadic bloody clashes with the hated common enemy, the cops, the pigs, the man. The blue-crusted army of fearsome gabacho troops from the East LA Sheriff's Department. The Hotel Ashman is a good place to stay if you want to get next to whatever's happening on Whittier Boulevard. The window of number 267 is about 15 feet above the sidewalk, and just a few blocks west of the Silver Dollar Cafe, a nondescript tavern that is not much different from any of the others nearby. There's a pool table in the rear, a pitcher of beer sells for $1, and the faded Chicano barmaid rolls dice with the patrons to keep the jukebox going. Low number pays, and nobody seems to care who selects the music. We had been in there earlier when not much was happening. It was my first visit in 6 months, since early September, when the place was still rancid with the stench of CS gas and fresh varnish. But now, 6 months later, the Silver Dollar had aired out nicely. No blood on the floor, no ominous holes in the ceiling. The only reminder of my other visit was a thing hanging over the cash register that we all noticed immediately. It was a black gas mask. Staring blindly out at the room, and below the gas mask was a stark, hand-printed sign that said, "In memory of August 29th, 1970. Nothing else, no explanation, but no explanation was necessary, at least not to anybody likely to be found drinking in the Silver Dollar. The customers are locals, Chicanos and barrio people, and every one of them is acutely aware of what happened in the Silver Dollar Cafe on August 29th, 1970. That was the day that Ruben Salazar, the prominent Mexican-American columnist for the Los Angeles Times and news director for bilingual KMEX TV, walked into the place and sat down on a stool near the doorway to order a beer he would never drink. Because just about the time the barmaid was sliding his beer across the bar, a Los Angeles County Sheriff's deputy named Tom Wilson fired a tear gas bomb through the front door and blew half of Ruben Salazar's head off. All the other customers escaped out the back exit to the alley, but Salazar never emerged. He died on the floor in a cloud of CS gas, and when his body was finally carried out hours later, his name was already launched into martyrdom. Within 24 hours, the very mention of the name Ruben Salazar was enough to provoke tears and fist-shaking tirades not only along Whittier Boulevard, but all of East LA. Middle-aged housewives who had never thought of themselves as anything but lame-status Mexican Americans, just trying to get by in a mean gringo world they never made, suddenly found themselves shouting, "Viva la Raza!" in public. And their husbands, quiet Safeway clerks and lawn care salesmen, the lowest and most expendable cadres in the great gabacho economic machine, were volunteering to testify. Yes, to stand up in court, or whatever, and calling themselves Chicanos. Oh, Cece, we're running low on battery here, I just want you to know. All this happened very suddenly, too suddenly for most people. One of the basic laws of politics is that action moves away from the center. The middle of the road is only popular when nothing is happening, and nothing serious has been happening politically in East LA for longer than most people can remember, until 6 months ago, the whole place was a colorful tomb, a vast slum full of noise and cheap labor, a rifle shot away from the heart of downtown Los Angeles. The barrio, like Watts, is actually a part of the city core, while places like Hollywood and Santa Monica are separate entities. The Silver Dollar Cafe is a 10-minute drive from City Hall. The Sunset Strip is a 30-minute sprint on the Hollywood freeway. Whittier Boulevard is a hell of a long way from Hollywood by any measure. There is no psychic connection at all. After a week in the bowels of East LA, I felt vaguely guilty about walking into the bar in the Beverly Hills Hotel and ordering a drink, as if I didn't quite belong there. And the waiters all knew it. I had been there before, under different circumstances, and felt totally comfortable, or almost. There is no way to, well, to hell with that. The point is that this time, I felt different. I was oriented to a completely different world, 15 miles away. Anyways, guys, that's the end of the first section there. It's actually quite a long piece. But that is more or less the murder that brought Hunter into connection with Oscar Zeta Acosta, and they ended up deciding to go to Las Vegas to do the interview that Hunter wanted to do with him to get the story. And they felt they needed to escape to Las Vegas because basically Oscar Zeta Acosta had these bodyguards that Hunter didn't trust, and they couldn't get away from these bodyguards, and Hunter felt like Oscar was not going to really talk candidly and give him the full scoop with these guys hanging over his shoulder. And they went off and found that Las Vegas was kind of a fun place to be, and you know, talking about the cops killing people wasn't really as much fun as they you know, had been thinking, and they kind of gave in to temptation, and well, you know, they had a really great time. And Jan Wenner ended up going to check on Hunter, who was supposed to be working on something, and Hunter was not working on that, and Jan Wenner pulled something out of the typewriter and started reading it and just started laughing and was like, you know, what is this? This is great. And Hunter was like, oh, that's nothing. It's just something I'm doing in my spare time for fun. But Jan Wenner was like, hey, finish this, send it to me. I'll pay you for this. And that was Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas. Ended up being published, you know, in serial form. I think it was just 2 pieces, so 2 magazines, which I think the first, maybe in the second one, it was the only thing published in the magazine. It was just, you know, a magazine full of Fear and Loathing. And of course, Ralph Steadman was hired to do the illustrations, and they became an epic part of it. Let me see, I got one of them here before the battery dies on us. Yeah, here's a good one. Maybe we'll just read a little bit. Yeah, let's just read a little bit here. Anyways, okay, oh yeah, this is the part when he's talking about this guy that he went to get acid from or whatever. Alright, this is chapter 8. Genius around the world stand hand in hand, and one shock of recognition runs the whole circle round. That's a quote from Arc Linkletter. I live in a quiet place, where any sound at night means something is about to happen. You come awake fast, thinking, what does that mean? Usually nothing, but sometimes it's hard to adjust to a city gig where the night is full of sounds, all of them comfortably routine. Cars, horns, footsteps. No way to relax. So, drown it all out with the fine white drone of a cross-eyed TV set. Jam the bugger between channels and doze off nicely. Ignore that nightmare in the bathroom. Just another ugly refugee from the love generation. Some doom-struck gimp who couldn't handle the pressure. My attorney has never been able to accept the notion, often espoused by reformed drug abusers and especially popular among those on probation, that you can get a lot higher without drugs than with them. And neither have I, for that matter. But I once lived down the hill from Dr. Blank on Blank Road, a former acid guru who later claimed to have made that long jump from chemical frenzy to preternatural consciousness. One fine afternoon, in the first rising curl of what would soon become the great San Francisco acid wave, I stopped by the good doctor's house with the idea of asking him, since he was even then a known drug authority, what sort of advice he might have for a neighbor with a healthy curiosity about LSD. I parked on the road and lumbered up his gravel driveway. Pausing en route to wave pleasantly at his wife, who was working in the garden under the brim of a huge seating hat. A good scene, I thought. Here's a good scene. Kind of like that hat I did. A little boat. A little out of place. Let's see. A good scene. A good scene, I thought. The old man is inside brewing up one of his fantastic drug stews, and here we see his woman out in the garden pruning carrots or whatever, humming while she works. Some tune I failed to recognize. Humming. Yes. But it would be nearly 10 years before I would recognize that sound for what it was. Like Ginsberg, far gone in the Dr. Blank was trying to hum me off. There was no old lady out there in that garden. It was the good doctor himself, and his humming was a frantic attempt to block me out of his higher consciousness. I made several attempts to make myself clear. Just a neighbor come to call and ask the doctor's advice about gobbling some LSD in my shack just down the hill from his house. I did, after all, have weapons, and I like to shoot them, especially at night when the great blue flame would leap out along with all that noise. And yes, the bullets too. We couldn't ignore that. Big balls of lead alloy flying around the valley at speeds up to 3,700 feet per second. But I always fired into the nearest hill, or failing that, into blackness. I meant no harm. I just liked the explosions, and I was careful never to kill more than I could eat. Kill? I realized I could never properly explain that word to this creature toiling here in its garden. Had it ever eaten meat? Could it conjugate the verb hunt? Did it understand hunger? Or grasp the awful fact that my income averaged around $32 a week that year? No. No hope of communication in this place. I recognized that, but not soon enough to keep the drug doctor from humming me all the way down his driveway and into my car and down the mountain road. Forget LSD, I thought. Look what it's done to that poor bastard. So I stuck with hash and rum for another 6 months or so until I moved into San Francisco and found myself one night in a place called the Fillmore Auditorium. And that was that. Alright guys, I guess we'll take it from there. Here we go, down the mountain road. Just some good neighbors. What do you think, CC?
That's right.
Yeah. That's my attorney speaking, folks. So if he says that's right, you know it is. Subscribe. Till next time.